What is a corporate secret you can now safely tell because you don't work there anymore? Before we start with the first story, please hit a subscribe and ring the notification bell to stay updated with us. Story 1. My aunt worked building chicken houses for large poultry companies. When you pay the extra couple dollars for free-range eggs, you feel you're doing the right thing. A lot of these companies have free-range chicken houses that leave the doors open. The chickens can come and go as they please. However, the companies install large fans at the doors that make the chickens afraid to leave the chicken houses, forcing them to stay inside. The whole free-range thing is ultimately bullshit. Story 2. Used to work at a factory that made us military boots and shoes. Looking perfect was way more important than comfort. Some for the Navy were hard to get the back height right when sewing forming the leather, so when the soles went on, they were adjusted to look level. Basically, the sole of a left or right would be much thicker than the other. I've seen some off by a half-inch 15 megameters. I constantly brought it up to management that it was essentially the same as having a piece of 1/2-inch board taped to the bottom of the boot, and would be extremely uncomfortable walking the 20 miles a day like they do. They didn't care as long as it looked good. Story 3. Health insurance dude. When you file a claim, it is often denied because they're counting on you not escalating it. Once you do, your case goes to a medical management group, which ought to be called the We Don't Want to Pay group. Keep escalating and involve your doctor. Fight for the insurance you paid for. Story 4. The insurance company's target for you paying on life insurance is about 10 years. It's long enough to have made back the commission and expenses plus some profit. After that, they will make it easier and easier for you to forget to pay for it and have it lapse. There will suddenly be an issue with automatic payments, things like that. But why? If the policy is lapsed when you die, there is absolutely no payout despite 10 years of premiums. That's why. Story 5. Half the IT systems in the oil and gas industry were built in the 70s and 80s and have a handful of consultants that can even touch them. These guys get paid hundreds of thousands a year to be on retainer, and sometimes go years without coming in. Worked with dozens of companies in the sector, and yet to see a publicly listed one where this isn't the case. At the top, they all pretty much use SAP, but there's some wild shit underneath that feeding information into SAP from a computer that's lucky if it runs dues. I've seen floors of personnel dedicated to manually inputting that stuff. Story 6. Oh, I used to work for a big in my region farm company that grew berries as well as bought berries from other farms. They packaged them and sold frozen berries under their own name as well as for Fred Meyer, Trader Joe's, Albertsons, etc. The farms they bought berries from were supposed to get certain checks done before we would accept their fruit, make sure their water source didn't contain E. coli, test the soil, have people look through the berries to remove bugs, prove their fertilizer and pesticides were approved by my company, etc. And at the end of the season, maybe 2 of the 50 or so farms we bought from had actually done everything. We're just happily letting people get raw-dogged by their frozen fruit. Story 7. The dirty little secret of Silicon Valley is churn. At peak startup boom, you'd have companies valued at billions of dollars with something like 30% YoY customer retention, which means that enterprises were spending millions of dollars on software licenses that their employees rarely used. In one startup I worked at, an account was considered healthy or unlikely to churn if 5% of seats were utilized at least twice per month. Story 8. Being kind is cheap to do, but gets such results. I always include sweets, candy with RMA exchanges of hardware. The stuff I send in comes back faster and is more often than not an upgrade over what was sent. I ask agents if there's a quality assurance report or survey for them stating I'm happy to fill it in. Hell, being polite, saying please and thank you, treating someone as a human not as a rage dump, is effective. Story 9. Almost everything on a quote to work on your car is negotiable. Most dealerships use matrix pricing on parts. That means you're paying more than MSRP. Most manufacturers have a 35% markup on parts. So if the part costs the dealership $100, Average MSRP would be about $135. I've seen dealerships that did a cost 100% matrix, so the customers would be charged $200 for that same part. Don't be afraid to ask for a discount. Story 10. So a lot of people in Asia do business like this. It's like an all-day thing, sometimes maybe even goes on for a few days. They take you to some luxury dinner, you eat the best kind of food. Then you go to some luxury spa, massage, like tea time or whatever, and basically fun. It could even be bowling in some giant high-rise. Then they take you to some very important person brothel only for the executives. You have all the sex you want. Then chill inside the brothel, which has soft beds with TV attached to it, in a sleeping room with all the other very important person members. You get honey-dicked into giving them the deal. Works 99% of the time. Story 11. My first assignment at my new job for a Fortune 500 company was to hack a security patch from slightly newer, but still well past its end-of-life version of PHP into our own ancient version of PHP that we'd been custom building ourselves because we couldn't get it pre-built for our operating system. Because we cared about security enough to cover our asses for a handful of high-profile vulnerabilities, but not enough to run modern software. This wasn't just used in some old machine off in the corner that ran a report once a month. This was an integral part of our core SaaS platform. They assigned me this despite having no indication that I knew anything about C code. I'd been hired for a job that included some light scripting and automation. If I was dumb and had screwed it up, it'd have been a SEV incident and quite expensive. If I was smart and nefarious, I could have hacked anything into that binary. I guess they judged well enough, because I did it without breaking things. Story 12. Not corporate, per se, but 15 years ago, when the Massachusetts state healthcare budget was tight, MassShealth, the state Medicaid program, decided to send out an extra redetermination form to everyone covered by MassShealth. This form was normally sent out yearly and used to determine if people still qualified, had their income changed, or had they been offered insurance through their employer, and was written in extremely difficult-to-parse English. If the form wasn't returned or if it wasn't delivered, extremely common if the person had moved or didn't have a permanent address, the person would immediately lose their MassShealth coverage. Sending this form out every 6 months instead of every year was a great way to knock a few thousand extra people off the Medicaid rolls in the middle of the year and save money in the short term. In the longer term, people who truly needed coverage would not be able to get their cancer treatment, diabetes medications, addiction treatment. It was a truly disgusting decision, and I was in a position where I was told by high-ups why it was being done but couldn't do anything about it other than protest. Story 13. Don't trust best before dates. It's all about selling the product. If the production date is not suitable for the buyer, it will just stay in the cold room and be processed on the day that will match the expire date, 21 days from production. So let's say something is produced today, February 16, and is set to expire on March 18, but the buyer, some grocery store, wants it to expire March 21. The producing company will just let the goods sit in cold storage for 3 days before putting on best before label. Story 14. Public transportation company. Most of the buses that were active back then haven't passed inspection for about 10 years, and the inspection approved the buses to be on the field every time. Until one of the bus's braking air system failed and ran over a couple of people while the driver was uphill. Everyone in the company knew these types of practices, and multiple times we would report this to HR and authorities. They never replied. As soon as that accident happened, there was an internal investigation by the authorities. They found out the reports from the employees were not investigated internally or reported accordingly, since HR never looked at them. And now currently the poor bus driver is currently in jail for that shit. And the company went bankrupt in less than 2 months afterwards. It was a shit show. Story 15. Oh, I've got so many. I used to work for Apple. The one that probably surprises people the most is that the level of support you get totally varies depending on how wealthy you are, and how likely an issue can come back to bite the company in the ass. To explain, there are varying levels of support. You have consumer support, then you have support for enterprise and education, Apple internal support, called partner relations, but is only applicable to employees and vendors of a certain level, in most cases. And finally, very important person support. Consumer support is just how it sounds. Any regular person that can call the 1-800 number can get help. Nothing special. AIMP requires a contract. Someone buying 15 devices for their business means nothing to Apple. You can complain all you want about how your business needs this. The call will end, and someone will take a good 3 minutes to laugh at you and tell their boss. The contracts are really hefty too. On the low end, it's usually around $250,000 for tech and services for 3 years. Some universities have terms that last for a decade and are several $1 million though. PR covers a few things. Some of it is worker support, like a store has a tech issue and needs to report it, but it also covers safety escalations. If your phone ever shocked you or your Mac smells smoky, they get involved. And carpe facto escalations. They cover widespread issues and develop solutions to them by working alongside engineers and programmers. But most of the time, they never talk to customers, only Apple employees. When they do talk to a regular consumer, it's a big deal, and likely being done to avoid any legal issues. Very important person support is basically what everyone thinks Apple should do for everyone. However, it's pretty much only available by being connected in some way. Celebrities, executives, various other rich people, they get treated special. When you sign up, you get assigned a special support ID and a dedicate advisor, so you pretty much just have one person that helps you instantly. That person will maybe have 3-5 people, at most, they're assigned to, and they're paid a handsome salary to be on call for. If Taylor Swift has someone call in at 2:45 in the morning because she needs someone to trigger the Find My alarm for her phone, you've got to get your ass up and do it. If The Rock's phone gets broken during a workout because a weight fell on it accidentally, even at 4 in the fucking morning, he can have someone call in and get a new phone sent to him directly in about 2 hours. If SpongeBob's voice actor, Tom Kenny, wants someone to help him know how to connect his iPhone to a projector in the middle of the day, he can have someone talk it through with him step by step, and they'll even go and speak to the projector manufacturer themselves if something goes wrong. Outside of special promotional offers, some of which are in gift bags at events like the Academy Awards, Grammys, etc., it's generally a paid service. When I worked there, it was $50, $0,000 per year, but I'd imagine it's gotten more expensive since then. Alright folks, that's a wrap. If you like more of this, please hit a thumbs up and subscribe to the channel. You can also share your thoughts in the comment below. I'll see you in the next video.